like to welcome everybody to another edition of the Major Music Lounge podcast. Joined with producer and artist Tali Rodriguez, going to talk to us a little bit about some of the projects he's been working on, the state of music production, and more. What's good, my brother?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Man, pretty good, man. I can't complain. Was spending some time actually this morning listening to some of the joints that you sent me. So we're gonna get into a little bit of that. Definitely a pleasure to have you on the show. I know we kind of been chopping it up back and forth last couple of weeks or so, and we finally got the show going. So definitely a pleasure for you to make the time to be here with.
For sure. Same here. Thanks for
No,
having me.
no problem at all. Just to get into some of it, you sent me over some info about yourself. So started rhyming and mixing in 98, started making beats in 2002. Who were some of your influences when you became a producer? Because when I hear some of what you sent me, I get those kind of like mid 90s kind of Wu-Tang vibes, RZA vibes. And it's got that old school hip hop sound to it. So who are some of your influences?
That's a good start. Yeah, that, him, Fourth Disciple, any of the people that were, involved in especially the early production with them, all the oldies like DJ Premier, Pete Rock, like everything you can, Eric Sermon, LP, just Blockhead, like anything that I could sort of come across, but especially definitely the like 90s stuff and just anything that sounded kind of dark. Even if it was like a happy song, it still had like a certain tinge of darkness to it or like an edge to it. I always like that. I like the stuff that sounded really nasty and like dirty because I kind of knew where that came from in terms of the sound. Like it wasn't something that was so far beyond something I could do at the time out of my house, instead of having to go to like a studio and use all these fancy things and all that kind of stuff. It's just what I kind of grew up listening to. So I always like that and never really felt too much pressure to try to be like too clean or too crisp, because that's kind of everything kind of changed in like the 2000s and then everything just started sounding amazing, which is great for what it is. But I kind of never really caught up to that.
Yeah. And that's the vibe that I got really from your music. It's kind of that grimy hip hop street sound. I might think back to like some MOP, kind of like I was saying, maybe some Wu-Tang. Just even like another producer kind of remind me of would be Alchemist.
Yeah, I don't know why I forgot him, but he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites, man. Now, as far as being an artist, who were some of your influences as far as like being a writer?
I'm Puerto Rican, so pretty much every Puerto Rican starts with Big Pun and kind of has to.
Yeah.
Unless you were out, doing stuff with Fat Joe or whatever. But like the first time it seemed like it felt like, oh, we can be acceptable in this particular, especially for somebody not from New York City, like somebody who's living in Georgia or in Atlanta or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, there's somebody up there doing that that's representing that. And so that means we can do it too. I know it sounds silly, but especially at 17 or 18 years old, that's, it's like, oh, cool. All right. So let me go ahead and try that. So like starting there, and even a lot of the stuff now, so much stuff kind of steals or at least plays on like patterns and stuff that he was doing flowing that back then were amazing. But even now you can hear it in people's styles. And that's like a weird legacy, a cool legacy for him to have, is just like how many people, not just Spanish people or whoever else, but just that have that kind of rapid fire thing. I'm sure somebody was playing with it before that, but I don't really remember anybody, especially that first album, doing it that well and doing it that well written. And then just rhymes on top of it. Like it was pretty much everything I would have wanted at the time. And then like Nas for storytelling and Jay-Z for conversational vibe, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. But I mean, like in terms of what and all the Wu-Tang stuff, but like Ghostface in particular was always my favorite out of them. But like that kind of stuff. Basically anything that was, I don't know, that you had to think about a little bit. Like even if it was like a popular song, it wasn't just like complete fluff. It was a little bit something to think about, because I think too much. And so, you know, anything that appeals to that would be good. But yeah, stylistically, Big Pun, and then any of those people I just mentioned. But
Yeah, rest in peace, Big Pun. Rest in peace, Big Pun. That was and it'll be talked about forever. I thought that Big Pun had a very, very bright future ahead of him. And I think like when he passed away, I might have been like a junior or senior in high school around that Capital Punishment album that he had came out with. And yeah, I remember just popping that in and just hearing this flow. It was something refreshing just at that point in time, because you had him, you had Jay-Z coming up, you had Nas coming up, Pac and Big had just passed away, and the game was kind of changing, like going into the 2000s. So, and that was really sad to see when it happened.
yeah, I blocked it out. I don't even remember. I was probably in like first year of college or something.
I got you.
And I just remember it happening, but it was kind of weird. It didn't quite hit the same way that like Tupac and Biggie did. Maybe it was because I was younger. Maybe it was because I just hadn't experienced that level of, you know, whatever. When it happened, it was almost like, it felt like you could kind of see it coming. It didn't feel like it was quite as abrupt.
Yeah.
And that's sad, you know, like that sounds like cold or something. I didn't know the guy, but you know, you could just sort of tell over time, even like listening to the voice, and like how much harder it was for him to get some of that stuff out, and the kind of tricks that they had to do to try to even make it sound any good, like on the second album especially. I was just like, oof, this isn't looking good, you know. And
now, you originally from Atlanta, or?
No, I'm from Ohio, so I'm from a little town west of Cleveland.
Okay. All
Loring,
right. All right.
Amherst, Elyria.
What brought you to Atlanta? Just kind of life, or?
We moved, yeah, when I was like 15. We moved down here to Jonesboro, if anybody knows where that is. But and yeah, I went to high school, graduated high school, and then we moved up to the north side, and I've been pretty much here ever since, except for a couple of times here and there off for different, like for college and different stuff like that. But
yeah,
pretty much grew up either in Ohio in the Midwest or down here. And then when we were growing up at the time, everybody was playing all the same stuff. So like, it didn't really matter where you were in the country. Like, you would get influences from everywhere, and it wasn't so segregated in terms of what you heard. So down here, we were listening, even, you know, I was listening to everything because everything was getting played on the radio. And so I don't know why I just answered the question that you haven't asked yet, but people will always ask, like, where'd you get this from? Or how'd you enjoy that? And it's like, you hear everything all the time. It was just like there. And now when you're growing up, everything's so specialized that I don't think people get enough chances to listen to other stuff that they haven't heard, or different styles and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of really how I felt, like, because I grew up in Louisiana, and like I listened, you know, when I was growing up, I listened to a whole lot of like music from Atlanta. Like, you know, I was on Outkast and Southern Playlistic, then that old Goody Mob, you know, Soul Food. Also, let's see, yeah, Field Mob too. Man, and it was a lot of hip hop that I listened to that wasn't strictly from Louisiana. And at the time, I remember like people looking at me a little differently because of that. Because, you know, I listened to more music that wasn't from where I was. But then I look back on it, and becoming a music producer, a lot of that is a part of what crafted my sound today. So, you know, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would. You know, I didn't want to just limit myself to just sounding one way. Now, it's not, because I always want to show homage to, you know, producers that came from my state, like a Manny Fresh, for example. But you know, I do also, like yourself, I'm a fan of like RZA. I'm a fan of Alchemist. I'm a fan of Jay Dilla. I'm a fan of Dr. Dre.
I've totally forgot him too. You're just naming all these people I blanked on earlier. But
yeah.
So you didn't have a No Limit chain? They were.
Oh, I like them too. I actually listened to them. It just I listened to a lot of other stuff too, and I wasn't just like No Limit or anything like that.
Yeah, that's all I heard down here for 4 years. It was like, even in Atlanta, like, and when Outkast would come out with something, we were listening to it. But other than a couple of things like that, it was just like nonstop, month after month, some other No Limit thing. And I look back and listen to it now, and it's funny. It's just like what a great marketing thing. And some of the songs really hit good and whatever, but God, there's so much crap. And it was just like these huge CDs with like 3 or 4 good songs on it. But that's how a lot of that stuff was back then.
And they were churning out albums like almost every other week down there. And I remember, like, you're right, like, because I was being in the center of it. I remember like they went from playing all this No Limit stuff from probably around 94 to about 98. And then around 98,
Cash Money.
Cash Money, yeah. And then but Juvenile was kind of on a come up a little before that. That 400 Degrees album, he dropped that only locally. And then after he got signed, they dropped it nationwide. So that's when he kind of blew up, and just everything else with the whole Bling Bling song. And, you know, it was off the races from there. But then, like, we also listened to like a lot of H-Town rap too around that time, like Slim Thug, Lil Kiki, Boss Hog, Outlaws. Well, that was Slim Thug's group, and DJ Screwed Up Click. So it was kind of like it was mainly, if you were from Louisiana, you listen a little bit of H-Town, you listen a little bit of ATL, and listen to what we had. But I was kind of like everywhere. I liked West Coast hip hop. I like East Coast hip hop, and I just kind of grew up a hip hop head. But yeah. What do you use to make your beats? Like, what do you produce with?
Like the hardware, I just use I use the machine, various versions of it. I have like the really old one, but only a couple of the buttons still work. And then I've got the second one. They're both like the simple ones. Like they make like the studios and all the fancier ones, but I don't tend to use a lot of that other, like, there's this amazing thing that has all this cool stuff and you got this touchscreen and all these other things, but I'm pretty simple. Like I started using like Fruity Loops. And so without a MIDI or anything. So I'm just like sitting there poking and things in here and there and doing it like really scientifically and methodically, because that's the only way I knew how at the time, because I didn't have anything to actually kind of do it more organically. And so the machine, now I just use it kind of to chop and cut stuff up. But then when it actually comes time to mixing it and doing all that, I don't keep it in there. I usually put it in Audition or something. Like, again, I'm simple. I use like, I've been using Audition or Cool Edit since like 2000. So I just like to stick with whatever it is works for me. But if anybody saw how I actually make beats, they would, like, all my, the people I make stuff for and that I've told, they're just like, what's wrong with you? Who are you? I thought I knew you. What do you mean you're not using the pads for this and that? And I'm like, I mean, I'll use them if I want, but I find it to be a little bit like, it's not going where I want it to go. I'm not going to like force myself to do it that way. So whereas some people, that's the only way they can do it. And that's cool. I wish I could do it more that way, but I just have my own little streamlined way that I do it.
Yeah, man. And it's so one thing, doing this show I started this show in January, and out of all the people that I've actually interviewed, like me, you're a machine guy. So like,
MPC is too complicated for me. I know that sounds stupid, but
yeah. I mean, I'm like you. I have MPC, but like, I've been using machine since probably like 2009, and I just love that workflow so much that, it's going to always be my primary music production program, app, whatever you want to call it. And I dabble a little bit in MPC, and also in the iOS devices, iPad. I dabble in BeatMaker. At the end of the day, machine is still going to be my go-to for production. Do you mainly just like sample, or do you use any of like the expansions, or use any other synthesizers? Or
so samples when I do. Like, most of the stuff that's any good that I've made is usually something I've found somewhere and just molded into something. But I always add, like, I do a lot of layering, and I got synthesizer, I've got guitars, I've got drums, I got all kinds of different things that I can play. I'm not any good at playing them, but I can play them for the purpose that I need them for, to like add like layers to stuff. And so it's kind of a mix of both, because what I want, or what I always sort of wanted when I first started, I don't know if I even care now, but what I wanted back then was like, I didn't want a person to be able to tell what was sampled and what wasn't. I just wanted it to sound like it was just like, this is the beat and this is what it is. And unless they knew exactly where that thing was from, they wouldn't really be able to tell whether it was like something I played, or if it was something that I just totally ripped off of something else, like, I don't know why. I just thought that was fun to try to hide it, try to sort of
I would
make it
be
not so obvious.
similar. Not the fact that didn't necessarily want people to understand whether or not I sampled, but like, I mean, I guess you could say in a way it was, but like, I would make some of these beats and people would ask me, "Hey, did you sample that?" And I'm like, "No, that was just something I played." I say that to say, like, there's an argument, and it's been an ongoing debate about like sampling versus just playing melody straight up. I would probably expect, what your take might be on it, because similar to mine, I like to sample a lot as well. Or what's your opinion on that argument between sampling versus playing melodies?
What's the argument that like one of them's better than the other? That one of them's
Well, the argument is that if you're sampling, that's not really producing, and that's not really creating, versus like even like some producers even frown upon others for like using loops. And to me, that's very similar to sampling. Or I look at using loops like, if you were to send me a loop, for example, I look at that as collaborating. I don't necessarily look at it like it's cheating or anything.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I have this conversation with various people, especially other producers, because I just got back into this like a year and a half ago. I took a bit off to like finish school and do all this, do some other things. And I just kind of got tired of it all. But like when I came back, it felt like all of a sudden there's like all these people selling like packages of things with, drum loops, which isn't uncommon even back then, but like sampling, like, here's a whole bunch of things that we cut out for you to make the beat. And my first initial reaction was like, what, cheating? You're cheating. You're doing like, what is that? That's not what you're supposed to be doing, right? And then as I talked to more people and I sort of thought about it more, like I send stuff to people all the time. Like if I hear a song and I like don't think I can do anything with it, but I think somebody I know can, I'll send them the stuff. Or if I find drums that I like, but I don't want to use them anymore, or I don't use them at all, I'll send them to other people and they use it. That's the collaboration part. But like the part of it that still kind of throws me off is like, I feel like the entire fun of all of it is taken away in a way if you've already done that particular aspect of the work for me. If I'm a producer and if I'm calling myself a producer, if I'm a rapper and I need beats or whatever, like buy all the loops in the world and put them in there and do whatever, right? Yeah. But like, I feel like part of the fun of the producing, if not most of the fun of the producing, is like making it work from something that it wasn't meant to be in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So when that's already sort of taken out of it, I feel like you're missing out on the fun part, but I don't hate it anymore. Like I said, I've gotten over my initial reaction of being like, that's not how you're supposed to do it, because there's little things that we all kind of do. Like I'll have a friend who'll just send me a folder full of stuff that he found that he can't make anything out of. And it's just a bunch of old songs or songs from Asia or who knows what it is. And it's like, well, I didn't go digging for them. Does that mean that my particular, whatever I make out of this, I somehow cheated myself out of it? I don't think so. So I kind of get it, but I think I'll always kind of, in a strange little way, feel sorry for people who like don't want to take that one extra step where you're actually doing it, that part of it yourself, because that to me is the most fulfilling.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. Like, I think the part that I have, I won't necessarily even say issue with, but like, I think you should flip the sample even more. Like, to me, just dragging, dropping onto a timeline and throwing some drums behind it.
Yeah,
I can do that in 5 minutes, and say I made a beat. It's nothing creative about it. At least pitch it, chop it up, do something with it, add some effects to it, but they keep it the same way. And that's the only issue that I have with it.
And then I think a lot of it just ends up sounding the same, right? Like, not because they can't do any better or not because the beat isn't any good, but like all the producers that we've named already so far, like you put like something plays on it. Like my wife can tell me, like, Jay Dilla will come on and she'll be like, is that a Jay Dilla beat or something? And she's not even like super into it, but like she can tell the styles of these sort of the older and the way coming up. And like the only way you really develop that style, I think, is either the way you flip the sample or do the thing, or the way that you edit it afterwards, right? But other than that, if you're just taking something else that's from the same pack that like 10 other people bought or 100 other people bought, unless you're doing something really radical to it later, it's going to sound the same as like somebody else doing the same thing. And so how do you develop like a sound that way? I don't know, but I really don't want to judge it anymore. But, you know, but your original question, I'm sorry, I got the thing, like whether sampling or playing is better than the other, you know, can it not just be like different, like two different ways of doing the same thing? Like, because I really admire people who can play all this stuff. There's a couple of people who I grew up like that taught me how to make beats who were really sample based, and some that were just played everything, like they were in bands or whatever it is. And so they would just, they play everything in there and it would sound amazing, but it has a certain sound, right? It's like really hard. I don't care who you are. Like I've heard a million different things, and like, no matter what, it's, if you're playing it yourself, unless you're really good at like finding, you know, like whatever plugin will make it sound a little bit older, it's still going to sound like it came from some synthesizer or some kind of like keyboard thing somewhere. And that's cool. That's awesome. That sounds good, especially if that's what you're looking for. But if you're looking for that sort of older sound, like the 90s stuff from East Coast more so than West Coast, right? Or from the South for that matter, then you're going to have to sample, or you're going to have to sample you playing stuff, right? Like, I don't know how else you get around that. Like, I don't know how you play chops. I'm sure you can. I'm sure somebody's done it. But so I don't know. I like them both. I don't see why it's got to be like a big battle over one thing or the other. Like, I've tried both, and I'm just way better at the other. I'm way better at the sampling than I am at playing it. Like,
and I agree. You know, at this point in life, I see like a lot of other producers, like DJ Payne, for example, posting people that message him or that comment on his posts about using loops and sampling and things along those lines. And I just think we're at a point now where there's all this technology out here. Create. I don't care how you do it. You know, if you're making music at the end of the day, create. That's the main thing that we got to get past. And I just also think it's like a pointless argument that we're still having in 2021 going into 2022 almost at this point. And I think things need to change for a lot of producers.
Try everything. I've tried to make certain styles of beats and it just, I wasn't good at it, so I didn't keep doing it. And that's half-assed, but like that's what but it doesn't make me not like those styles of beats or make me think they're any better or worse. Like a lot of people shit on trap stuff or whatever, and it's like I've tried 20 times just to sit down from scratch and try to make something that sounds good, and all it sounds like is somebody trying to make something that sounds like that. It does not at all in any way encompass what that actually sounds like. It's actually more complicated than people give it credit for. You know, but because it just sounds repetitive, or it sounds like it's simple, and I guess in some cases maybe it is, but in a lot of cases, like if you're listening closely, there's like so much different stuff going on. It's almost like a weird EDM like vibe where they're using all these different sounds and doing these cool things with them that, unless you actually have the ear for it, I don't know why you would ever know what it is, what the skill is involved in it. You know what I mean? Because it just doesn't, especially for somebody who samples a lot. At first I wouldn't see the skill in it, but then once you go and you actually try to do it yourself and you realize it's like, oh, like they're doing something that you don't know how to do. So it must be, you know, there must be something to it. So you shouldn't be shitting on it or whatever. But
and ultimately, like doing this for as long as I have been, because I've started like in around 05, 06, but like I've been through all those eras as far as I've been at one point making trap beats, but I think ultimately you're going to land where you're going to gravitate to wherever your influences lie. Like, you know, we talked about the influences earlier, and I think though your sound, you know, it's not apples to apples, it's still going to be influenced by what you've listened to and what you've kind of become a fan of. It's only natural to me, in my opinion. So I wanted to talk about some of the music that you dropped off to me that I listened to. Got a chance to, and I feel funny saying this because of the title, but I listened to Sack of Crap.
Oh, yes.
And then, you know, what I liked about that one, you actually spoke on a little bit earlier. I love the kind of dark old school hip hop vibes of that project. And then another one I listened to is Devoid of Orbit with Pyro. And that's one that I like as well. Now, doing EPs with other artists, is that something that you kind of regularly do, or Like, how has that helped you grow your network and maybe get a little bit more exposure than, previously?
Yeah, so I've kind of done it from the coming backward, the background coming forward, right? Like when I first sort of popped back in, I think it was like last September or something, P-Ro and somebody else, a guy named Melody that we know, who's a producer up in Boston, they were having a beat battle or something, like one of those things on Instagram, and P-Ro hadn't done anything in like years. We had both just kind of like, oh, we're old, we're just not going to keep doing this anymore. And that happened, and I was like, that got me into it. I'm like, all right, you know what, like maybe we should like just try one more time. And so we just started making stuff together. And but most of what I was doing was mixing, because I could take whatever it was that they would send me and I would mix it. And I didn't think never really thought about it that much, but I didn't think it was that great. But everybody, they're like, oh yeah, this sounds really good. This is what I want. And so I used that to connect with this guy named G Fan Black, who people might know of, who's just dropping like an album every month for like 2 years now. And through him and mixing for him and making beats for him, I meet some of the people who are like features on his albums. And then I start working with some of them. And most of it originally in the start is through mixing. Right. And then little by little, I start to, it's like, hey, I also do this. Like, you got any beats? Let's talk about how we can have some like mutually beneficial things going on. And so just little by little, you kind of like reach out and gravitate out. I still have a pretty small circle, but when I sent you that list of things that I've just been a part of this year, and it's like the stupidest looking thing ever now that I look at it in hindsight, because it's like, when would you have ever found time to do all of this stuff? Most of it is mixing. I've got the 2 EPs that are just me over other people's, stuff, and then a third coming out soon. And everything else is just pretty much like mixing a bunch of stuff for folks and getting paid, and in some cases getting, like finding some kind of way to make it fun for everybody, and just little by little reaching out to like a new person, and then reaching out to a new person. Like, I don't want to take too much on, because I don't want to be like necessarily working with folks just for the sake of working with them, and I don't want to have too many folks I can't rely on. Like I've got a nice circle of people who I know how they work. They know what it is that I want when they're sending me stuff to mix, or if they want beats, I know what they want. And so it's very simple to do it that way. But I'm also trying to reach out little by little, and that's all through just knowing them and the connections they have, and then social media and whatever else. And by social media, I mean like the one thing I can actually do, which is Instagram. But I'm trying to start on Twitter, but I'm just like, I sound like an old person, but I didn't grow up with it. I kind of know how it works, but you got to build the following there too.
Yeah, yeah, it is much different. Like, I have a lot more of my network is on Instagram, and just the audience as well, that, even people that don't do music that follow me probably as a fan of my work, would be on Instagram. Facebook, it's kind of changed. It's more personal things, I guess, I put on Facebook. And then Twitter, it's a little mix of music production and sports. It's either hit or miss for me on there, honestly. I've probably in the last maybe 2 years I started using Twitter more, but I've been on there since 2009. But I've kind of gravitated between those three. But Instagram will always be probably the number one place for music production and just networking for me. I feel like just there, kind of like we're doing now, people just have a lot better conversation about just what it is that I'm posting. And I feel like all those other places, you have a lot of trolls and people that try to bait you into arguments and things like that.
Yeah, I stay away from it. I get on Facebook like once a year just to make sure I haven't missed some amazing, really horrible information, or like whatever. Maybe that's the only way somebody can get a hold of me. But other than that, like, I just totally stay off of it. And I always encourage my friends or people I deal with, like, just stay off of it. Like, there's no reason to be on there, especially for the reasons they are. Because then they just call me or they text me and they're pissed off about something somebody said about this or that. And it's like, so you wouldn't have had to experience that at all if you had just not been there. And now it's actually ruining your day. And so now you've got to figure out how to go back to having a good day because somebody said something about you and you got caught up in this vortex of going back and forth with somebody, and it's just like you don't even know if they're a person, who they are. So it's like, oh God.
You gotta protect your mental health, man. What else is on tap for you for the rest of the year? As far as 2021, even going into 2022, what do you have on deck?
Let's see. So just had those three albums that I mixed drop this past week. I don't know, it's just the way it happened. Hero dropped an album, big old album that's very good and getting good reviews. Onaje Jordan and Tone Beats, they dropped their dual album, and that thing is amazing. So whenever somebody gets to hear it, not just because it sounds good, because just the beats, I mean, every single one of them and all the features, everybody on it, like nobody brought it down. It's just super good from beginning to end. And then this Shokofa project, which just dropped on Halloween, it's Sankofa and Show Rocker, that just happened. And that's been in the bag for a minute. Like we finished with that in, I want to say July or something, but it's just been kind of hanging out. And they just decided to drop it on Halloween, and that's like super dope. So then beyond that, those are the ones that just came out. And then I've got one more EP to do, a solo one over Home Team Beats, if anybody knows, they have Home Team Records. So Najee Jordan, Chuck Chan, and Prophecy. And those are like the three producers they got, and they each did 2 beats on it. And then Najee did a interlude, and that's coming out. And then that'll be the end of the little Devoid of Orbit EP series. That was just like something I wanted to do to get that stuff out. It's stuff that I had kind of written but never actually gotten to put out. And now that that's done, I've got a project next year that's going to be like the big solo project that will probably be the first and last I ever do. Like in that particular way. I have a couple of features of people I've really wanted to work with but haven't, and a couple of people that I know that I like. And beyond that, like I just want to keep making beats, and I'll keep mixing stuff just for the hell of it. But that's pretty much what it is. Lugs, if anybody knows Lugs from England, we've got an album that I produced that's coming out in December. We don't have an exact date yet, but that's happening.
Okay.
There's a couple other ones I can't tell you about just because they don't want me to talk about them.
Yeah.
But and one other secret project which involves a whole lot of MCs, but I can't really say too much about that. But the information will be out pretty soon too. I got a lot of stuff coming out. Like the last few months have just been crazy, and the next couple of months are going to be crazy. And hopefully it can slow down a little bit so I can actually focus on my own thing for like a couple of weeks, actually get some stuff written and not, Najee Jordan and Witchcraft. That's another project that's coming out in December that I'm mixing.
Okay.
That's almost done. So there's a lot of stuff, but you notice it's all the same kind of, it's basically I'm Home Team Records, and the people I mess with, like Knuckle Draggers and Cloak and Dagger and a bunch of folks in Boston. And that's about it. Every once in a while, I still sneak out here and there.
Yeah, man. I admire that about you, just being also another person. And you do a whole lot more in terms than what I do. I mean, I just make beats and rap. I do the podcast. Me dabbling in a few video and photography projects. But how, I guess you could say, or a better question would be, managing your time between all those different spaces. Do you find it difficult, or do you find ways to, manage your time effectively?
So I'm a little bit all over the place anyway, just as like a human being. Like, so I like to have a lot of different things going on at once, because I have trouble getting too bogged down in any one thing. A lot of people are the exact opposite. And everything I ever read on anywhere about how you're supposed to do this is pick one thing, pick 2 things, start it and finish it. And that's the way you're supposed to do it. But it's just never worked for me that way. And so I'm much better off, like, if somebody wants me to do something with them and we're like working, I want that stuff like 2 or 3 months in advance, so that like I can, one day I might feel like doing 4 or 5 of their songs, and then I might not feel like doing anything with it again for like 2 weeks. But I got something else that I'm also working on. And so for a few days I can work on that, and then I'll kind of sour on that, and then I'll have something else and I'll work on that. And eventually, and then I'll go back and listen to the original mixes that I did and to the new ones. And that's kind of how I do it. And it's not anything I would recommend for anybody else, but like, I like to have a lot of different things going on, so that whenever I feel the energy to do it, I'm putting good energy into the thing that I'm making or that I'm working on, as opposed to putting like forced energy or like even negative energy at times. Like, it could be the most awesome project ever, and if you're just sick of hearing the person's voice or something, this is especially, from the mixing end of it, it's nice to just have something else to kind of a different style or a different voice to hear in your head for a little while. And then you can always just come back to that one later. If I have to get it done really super quick, I can do it. But I feel like the work is so much better when I actually have time to sit with it and like send them mixes and have them listen to them and be like, what do you think, Nick? Pick it apart, make me notes, let me know what you want to sound different. And then get that back and then work on that some more and massage it and get it good. And then send that back. And they're like, yep, that's good. Just fix that one thing. And I'm like, all right. But I don't know. I like the stuff to sort of organically bubble up that way. I don't really like to just walk in and be like, okay, I got to finish this project in a week and that's it. Cause then as soon as you put it out, you're going to hear 20 things that are like, that you weren't that happy with, something that you feel you could have done better, that you would have totally caught if you had the time to just listen to it with fresh ears. And
I'm the same way. It's like, and I've learned that I've tried that method before of saying I'm gonna work on one thing, but I get burned out pretty easy when I kind of just hone in on one thing. So same, I may work on a song or a couple of songs one week, and then I may edit some video projects the next week, not touch the music. And just kind of go back and forth between that and whatever else I'm working on. And it kind of helps me stay focused and motivated. And also the thought of not rushing it, because like you said, you might put it out too fast. Then you hear, oh, I didn't mix this right, or, drums sound this way, or, whatever the case may be. So yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. What, as far as like all of your platforms, where can our listeners find you online and, even your music?
Yeah, like sack of crap. Let's go back to that real quick, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so it's on my Bandcamp. It's Tali Rod 79. Like anywhere you look for me, it's gonna be Tali Rod 79 somewhere. But the only place I really have music up is like there. We've got some stuff on the streaming platforms, but it's usually group stuff because I don't have the account to put that stuff up. But like, so you can find, if you type in my name in Spotify or any of these things, you'll find various bits and pieces of things I'm either on or that I produced or that I, whatever. But like most of it, just look on Bandcamp and look on Instagram, like Tali Rod 79. That Sack of Crap was the album that I made as a beat album. That's beats that I sent to every, I made them and I thought they were amazing. And then I sent them to the people I made them for and none of them wanted to rap on them. It's like 16 tracks or something of the ones that I liked a lot and that nobody else did. And so that's why I called it that. Cause it's just like, here's all the, that's how it is. You make a bunch of beats, you make enough beats, you're going to make enough that people don't like. And, and so, but a lot of times they just get slept on and you never hear them and they never get the light of day and then they just disappear. And I like those beats. I thought they sounded pretty cool for whatever they were. And so they may not have been right for that project or whatever, but they don't deserve to be just completely forgotten. And so I just thought that would be a cool way to throw them out there. So like, if you're trying to see what stuff I sound like what I sound like, go on like GFan Black's page, go on Onaje Jordan's, go on Chuck Chan's, like you'll hear mixing that I've done. You'll hear like a lot of my stuff's on other people's pages, in other words. So
Sure.
That's a bit of a problem, I suppose. But on the other hand, it's kind of cool to have my hand in so many different things and not necessarily have to feel the pressure of any of it. It's just whenever I see it and I see somebody just made a list or somebody made a chart of this or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, I mixed that one, or oh yeah, I did that. And so I got to help them in some way. Like I feel the achievement the same way they do. It's like, even if it wasn't something I made. And so that part of it's really cool. So a lot of the stuff that I've done is going to be on other people's stuff.
Yeah.
On Jay Flizz's page, there's an album we did. It's not the satisfying answer, but you've probably heard me somehow, some way, and not necessarily known it if you're dabbling in any of the same kind of, sort of underground hip hop circles that people tend to dabble in these days.
And what about your Instagram? Give your Instagram.
Yeah, Tali Rod 79.
Okay.
TALIROD 79. It's there. I probably post like once or twice a week. I don't put up a bunch of like, no offense to anybody else, do whatever you want to do with your stuff. It's pretty cool. But like, whatever I'm putting up is usually somebody's project that I worked on or somebody's project that I listened to that I really liked. And even if I didn't have anything to do with it, I just liked it. And so I'll like make a thing about it, or some stupid video with me in like an Easter rabbit costume that my wife made over a beat I made, or just like whatever is on there is just like some really random stuff, but none of it's particularly like self-serving and like it's cool. There's beats, there's music, there's video. It's a good look. It's a good follow because I'm not going to spam your inbox with a bunch of pictures of me like giving you the bird or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be pretty simple. Whatever it is I put up is usually going to be either really good music or something that you'll probably be interested in if you're following me anyway, right?
Yeah.
And not a lot of fat, just stuff. Some people call it content, I guess, but I don't know. Just good stuff on there. Like 114 posts or something in a year and a half.
And the last question I always ask all the producers and guests that come on the show, if you can give one word of advice or, any piece of advice to an up and coming producer or creator, what would that be? Something you saw along the way with your journey?
Don't give up on yourself. Like, and it's like if you're making stuff that you like, which I would hope you are, like I can't imagine making stuff that you don't like yourself, right? And so it's like if you like it, but you're having trouble and you're not quite catching on, or for some reason just seems to be roadblocks every single time. There's this thing, or this person is going to do something and then they disappeared, or this person was going to do this and then that didn't happen. It's super easy to just get down on yourself and start questioning yourself. Like, I know this is good. Why doesn't it's like somebody else thinks it's good? And then the right 3 or 4 ears hear it, and all of a sudden you got way more stuff and way more work than you know what to do with, and then you find yourself in that position where like, oh yeah, I found the people who like the stuff I do. Like we, try to focus on that and make sure you're making yourself happy. Like the music you're putting out and the stuff that you're making is good. Somebody's going to find it. Like everything isn't for everybody, but everything's for somebody. Like there's something in some group out there, some person or people out there that are going to like the thing you're doing. And nowadays it's even easier than ever to find them, I guess, in one way, right? And the other way, there's too much stuff. And so it's hard to find them, but like, at least you have the option and the opportunity now to find them. You just gotta be patient. So don't compromise yourself. Don't start doing stuff that you wouldn't normally do just to try to find it, just to try to find whatever that circle is or whatever that group is that you're trying to appeal to. Just keep being yourself and eventually it's going to work out. You just got to trust yourself and trust your work.
Yeah. Don't give up. Biggest thing I learned, and you are absolutely correct. Eventually you're going to find a circle, or you're going to find a group of people that like what you're doing. And I mean, these stats tell you, for one, like I notice people in Russia jamming some of my stuff, man. And, I see like a lot of people added some of my music to their playlist. So you never know, where your market can potentially lie and what that market looks like. Totally agree. It was definitely a pleasure having you on the show. And, anytime you have anything, feel free, hit me up. We can come on, talk about it. And I will be, supporting everything that you're putting out, man. We maybe even have to work soon and, do something soon and,
for sure,
collab. So yeah, definitely hit me up, man.
Open up the small circle and make it slightly bigger.
Yeah, make it slightly bigger. Make it slightly bigger. You can catch the Major Music Lounge podcast on all podcast streaming platforms. And you could also follow me on Instagram at d._major music. Appreciate all the support. Got many more shows left for 2021, so stay tuned. And it's another episode